I'm trying to keep this short. I'm going to make a text box into a drop-down list on a PowerApps data entry form. So we're going to look at the SharePoint lists. We're going to look at adding a form into the Power App. We're going to look at changing the text input to a drop-down list, and we're going to look at how to update the records. So I've already got my Power App, and I've got two data lists connected to it already. One called Colors, one called DropDown Tester. If I look at the lists, I've got one called DropDown Tester, and all that is two columns, a title and a color. And I've got the list of colors you can choose from, and they're in the title field of another list called colors. So if I go back to my tree view, I'm going to insert an edit form. It's not connected to anything at the moment, so I'm going to connect it to the data source called DropDown Tester. Straight away it inserts that, connects all the fields to it. But you can see that this is a text form, not a drop-down list. So I want to turn it into a drop-down list. So if I go over to my edit fields list on the right hand side, and I choose my choose color field, that's showing me the three fields within this form, and I click on the drop down arrow at the side here, you can see that it's an edit text control. But if I change it to an allowed values control, it will become a drop down list. So at the moment it's not connected to the data field, but I need to connect it to the colors SharePoint list. So if I select the actual drop down list and I go to the item option in the top left, you'll see it saying parent allowed values. Well, that's not what I want to connect it to, so I'm just going to delete the option in there, and I'm going to connect it to the colors table or list. Okay, and that has now connected it. However, that's not the full story. If I go back over to properties, you can see that the items are colors and the value is compliance asset ID. I have no idea what that is, but if we just click on the drop down arrow, we want to connect it to the title because that's the field that contains the list of colors. As soon as I choose that, you can see that the first option is red, which was the first option in my list. Now that's the next step. The next thing after that is to select the little red dot up here because we've got an error, obviously. It says, if I hover over it, it tells me the name isn't valid, value isn't recognized. So if I just click on the drop down arrow and choose edit in formula bar, you can see that it's saying data card value 19 selected dot value. That's because if I click on it, you can see that that's the bit that's underlined. That's because if this was a text field, it would be a value, but it's no longer a text field. It's a drop-down list, which is connected to another list. So that list is a table. So I need this to tell it which fields to pull back from that list. So I just delete the word value. And if I start typing in title, because that's the correct name for the field, and choose title, that red dot goes away. And if I hold the Alt key down and click on the drop down arrow, you can see the options it gives me. So I could change that. Okay, now that's still not updating the record. So if I try running this, we'll see that it says no item to display. And that's because it doesn't know which item to show in that form. So if I just click on the form as a whole, so it selects the whole form, and I'm going to change the item to show me the first item. So if I type in first of the drop-down tester, close the bracket, when I run it, it shows me car and the color. And if I choose a different color, if I choose blue, that hasn't updated the data. That's because I've not set it to actually update as yet. So now I'm going to add a button which will submit this information. So if I go to the Insert menu and choose Button, move it over here, I'll just rename it as Submit. And the action that needs to happen when we select it, so the onSelect property, I'm going to change what it does to say Submit Form. And the name of the form is called Form 5. So if I start typing it in, you see there's only one form, Form 5. Close the bracket. And if I run this, at the moment it's showing me blue, but if I change this to green and submit, and then go back and look at my data and refresh it, it'll pick up the green change that I change it to. If I go back, change it one more time to yellow, submit, go back to my data, refresh it, it'll pick up the yellow. So there you go, that's converting a text field within a form to a drop-down list that picks up from another table.